Hi, this is Sean from the Horror Vision Horror Podcast. Before we get into the new episode, I just want to say real quick, if you've listened to this show or our sister show, A Most Horrible Library, you know I'm a big fan of the author Laird Barron, and I wanted to spread the word about something. Laird has been having some medical issues. The entire horror writers community is aware of this right now, thanks to the efforts of two remarkable individuals, the author John Langan, who wrote the only book in my adult life to give me nightmares, The Fisherman, and podcaster Mike Davis, who helms the Lovecraft e-zine. So these guys have set up and are proliferating awareness for this GoFundMe campaign to help with Laird's medical expenses because as a working professional writer in America, he doesn't have health insurance. That probably should surprise no one. I think that that's something everyone can relate to who pursues creativity as a career. So I just want to say I donated and I implore y'all to go out and do the same if you can. You can find Mike Davis at Misanthrope Mike or John Langan at Mr. Gaunt, or probably easier, you can just go to GoFundMe, go to their landing page, search Laird Barron, and you're going to get the result right away. Make sure it's the one hosted by Mike Davis. Early on, there was a bogus account set up to fill some person's pockets. Reprehensible, I know. This is where we are. Just make sure it's the one by Mike Davis. I think it's the only one up now, but just wanted to offer the caveat. But, if you haven't read Laird, you should. He's fantastic. And yeah, let's help the man because it's what we do.
A pandemic of violence floods the streets of major cities as cases of the media-dubbed murder virus MV20 soar, causing those infected to go on killing sprees. Caught in the middle, police detective Angela Miller finds her only trustworthy ally in the self-proclaimed psychic PI Gerald Henry. As the two try to navigate the violence, they are drawn into New Age guru Abramelin Harvest's plot to heal the planet. Harvest's missive:
the world is sick, and humanity is the infection.
The cure: murder. From the twisted mind of Sean C. Baker, author of A Collection of Desires and Shadowplay in Book 1, Kim and Jesse, comes his most vicious novel yet, Murder Virus. Available where books are sold.
"'Tis the night of the grave's delight, and the warlocks are at their play. Ye think that without the wild winds shout, but no, it is they, it is they." Hello, welcome to another episode of the Horror Vision Presents Elements of Horror. I'm Sean.
And I'm Missy.
And Missy, what movie are we going to talk about today?
Boys in the Trees, directed by Nicholas Verso.
Yes, this is 2016 is the date on IMDb. And I think, Missy, you're like me. You may have even told me about this movie, or our mutual friend John told us both about it, maybe.
I think John might have told me, and then I told you after I watched it.
It was on Netflix for, I feel like, all of 2016 and maybe even 2017. And I took for granted it was going to be one of those movies that was just always going to be on Netflix.
I think we all did.
So here's a caveat, ladies and gentlemen. If you're listening and you haven't seen this movie, you might want to. So here's where it's available, because we both rewatched this. Missy chose this movie. It is available and only available unless you get a PAL disc or whatever. If you have a region-free player, you can do that. It is available on YouTube. You can rent it for $4.99, I think, or $3.99, or you can buy it for $14.99. I don't know if others out there are like me. I don't know why. For a 46-year-old man, I'm fairly tech savvy. and I have no trouble. I'm not like married to physical media. I like physical media, but I recognize that streaming is a brilliant thing. Um, but for whatever reason, YouTube is like a blind spot for me. I go there to find music sometimes, or I go there to find like there's a few, I can't even tell you what, but like a couple shows that I follow on there about, I don't know, toys or records or whatever. It's really more factual. It's not somewhere I go for fiction. So it just was such a weird thing for me to go to YouTube or tell people go to YouTube and rent or buy this movie on YouTube. I don't know why that is. I may be the only person. I don't know.
No, I felt the same way. John told me about it last year that it was available to buy it there. So I had bought a digital copy when it was on sale around Halloween because I love the movie and I knew I'd revisit it.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it was only released in like I believe in Australia,
Yeah, it's an
so
Australian
you
production.
can't get it anywhere else unless I mean, if you have a region free player, so it is available on PAL discs. I have seen that, um, but it was never released here. And the only way I know how to get it is digitally on YouTube. That
Yeah,
said, I have a copy I had purchased, and it works the same way as if you buy a digital copy on Amazon. It was very clear. There were no ads. I had the sound was good. I had no problem with
yeah, same. I will say, like I rented it. I didn't buy it. If they ever release, and I had messaged the director Nicholas
it.
Verso
Verso.
a couple years ago, just on Twitter, just randomly, like maybe when I discovered this was no longer on on Netflix and was not anywhere else. Um, Probably not realizing it was on YouTube at the time because it's a blind spot, or maybe it wasn't on there at the time. But he had, I believe, I said, is there any plans for this? Because I love this movie and I can't believe it's not available. And I believe at the time he said, I'm hoping to announce something in the next couple months. And I guess nothing ever materialized. In the age of these, all the boutique labels, so to speak, that put stuff out, Arrow, Shout Factory / Scream Factory, I mean, Blue Underground's not going to do a movie like this most likely, but there's so many. Code Red. There's so many of these. I just find it mind-boggling that nobody has done this movie because it is so high caliber, in my opinion. And if you like Trick or Treat, if you like Tales of Halloween, if you like Donnie Darko, I mean, all of these movies have a certain like nostalgic, fantastical quality to them, magical realism, suburban fantasy, whatever you want to call it. And I just feel like this is like it should be on the same shelf as those movies. Would you agree? Would you think that am I
I
talking
agree with
crazy?
that. And even if you just like fantasy films and like coming of age stories, this fits there too.
Yes.
Um, Anybody I know who has seen the movie loves it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's it's difficult to find.
Yeah.
But
It's
that
a
said,
shame.
it's not that difficult because you can get it on YouTube,
Yes. So
which is how we both watch.
I would say that if you're listening to this, I mean, yes, there is a spoiler, and we are definitely going to talk about it. I don't want to talk around it because the purpose of this podcast, Elements of Horror, is to kind of deep dive and have a critical conversation about the movies that we pick. So, if you have not seen the movie, I would say turn this off, rent it on YouTube. It's $4 or $5. It's worth it. I just don't think if you're listening to this now and you have any inclination, I just don't think you won't like it because I feel like it's pretty universal. Like Missy said, there's that coming of age element, but it's not schmaltzy at all.
No, it's
Um,
not.
Not at all. Also, for people our age, right?
It's extremely nostalgic because it's going to put you in that time frame.
And the time frame, so it's not like Donnie Darko. It's not the 80s. But what it does is, instead of what Donnie Darko does with the 80s, Boys and Trees does for like the mid to late 90s, if you can picture that. And the soundtrack is right off the bat. You're just going to be like, are you kidding me? Like,
It's
um,
everything that played when we were in high school. I think it's supposed to take place in 1997,
yes, it
which
is
is the
1997.
year that's the year I graduated.
Okay, so I was
Um,
already out for 3 years by then, but okay, but nonetheless, I'm still very, was very aware of the music.
but it absolutely sets the stage for that. It puts you right in that time frame because you're going to recognize, you know,
So
Glycerin
much.
and Marilyn Manson and Lump. Like these are just songs that played on the radio all the time when we were their age, and it immediately puts you back. At least it does for me.
It totally does. And I'll tell you, like a really good, I don't like Bush, the band.
But I love that song.
When I hear Glycerin in that movie, it is an immediate wormhole back to the mid to late 90s. I mean, it just zip, I'm there.
Right. Same.
And the characters are so of that time, like the girls wearing the PJ Harvey shirt. Like you said, the lump, the president of the United States, that's on MTV or whatever it is in the kids' room. There's just so many like 97 isms. It's just really, also without being obnoxious. Like I will say, I like the Fear Street movies, but I feel like the first one, Fear Street 1994, there's so many fucking needle drops in that. It's like they'd start a song by White Zombie, and like before the scene was done, they'd be on another big song. I'm like, can we not like fill every
Right.
waking moment with a needle drop? Can maybe tone it down? So this is
That's not
definitely,
how this felt.
no, not at all. This is it's spacious. The music is there to just contextualize things.
It sets the stage very, very well, without being pushy at all.
Yes, well said, without being pushy.
Because I didn't find it pushy, but I did find myself, you know, singing along with some of the songs while I'm watching it because it puts you back there and you remember the words
The movie itself, it takes place in Australia. It's what, like the last day of school, which is weird because,
because it's Halloween.
yeah, but I don't know if that's because of the I don't know why that is. I don't know.
I actually never thought about that. That they do tell you it's the last day of school and
And
it's
it's,
also Halloween.
yeah, exactly. So I mean, I don't know. Does that have something to do with them being on the other side of the world? I don't think so, but I don't know. Maybe it was just a contrivance of the plot. I don't even care. It's so good, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I've honestly never even thought about that before, and I've seen it several times.
So Toby Wallace plays Corey, and he's kind of the main character, and he's with a group of friends that are the cool kids. And there's another kid, Jonah, played by Gulliver McGrath, and he and Corey used to be friends when they were little, and now he is an untouchable nerd, and Corey is part of the wolf pack of cool kids, and they just treat him fucking terrible. This other kid, and it's just kind of about that. It's about this night where it starts all about. You could tell early on Corey isn't exactly comfortable with what they do, but as the leader of the wolf pack, um, Django, played by Justin Halborough, who looks a lot like Sick Boy from Trainspotting, Johnny Lee Miller.
Oh yeah, he kind of does.
He totally reminds me of him. That, like, something about that blonde hair and the jawline,
It's
I
that
guess.
bleach blonde. Yeah.
Yeah, but he basically is like, law of the jungle, mate. Like you either, if you're one of us, this is what we do, and if you're not, then it gets done to you. And so, kind of get that. And then as the night goes on, Corey and Jonah end up kind of friends again, and they go on this journey. But there is something else afoot, and that's what we'll get to. I would just like to point out Toby Wallace, who played Corey. I haven't seen this movie in a couple years, so I was like, man, Kirsten and I were like, he looks familiar, but probably just because we've seen the movie before. No, He was Steve fucking Jones in Danny Boyle's Hulu show Pistol last year about the Sex Pistols.
That's very
So
cool. I have to check that out still.
it's so
I haven't
good.
seen it yet.
It's so fucking good. And he did a great job as Steve Jones. So yeah, Toby Wallace. Good on you, man. Missy, I'm gonna shut up. Talk about the movie, Boys and Trees.
Okay. It's Halloween night, and these two friends, Corey and Jonah, are kind of reunited, and they have this game they used to play when they were kids, that they call cocytus. It's like, um, they cross this bridge and then they're in like the land of make believe where they've always felt safe. Um, so they reconnect as teenagers on Halloween night and kind of start playing this game and telling each other stories and daring each other to do things. Not dangerous things, more like things that remind them who they used to be and who they used to be to each other.
Yes.
And as they start doing that, and we always say the veil is thin on Halloween, the, where the real world and the in between kind of blur together, and the movie plays with that. Um, so you start seeing a lot of it's based in the real world, but you get, if you're paying attention, you'll see shadows that look like wolves, and you'll see people with eye shine like cats, and
Yeah.
so you really want to be paying attention to what they're showing you, because you're getting a lot more. You're not just in the real world, and they're reminding you constantly if you're paying attention.
And it's funny because it's open to debate. Like I remember the first time I watched it, I wasn't sure if when you're seeing certain things, if it's their imagination. And because now, there's this push and pull where Corey is begrudgingly kind of hanging out with Jonah, right? This is where we're going to start going into the spoilers. So, um, after the initial sequence at the skate park that starts the movie where they pick on Jonah, Corey takes a picture of him with a bloody nose after Django punches him, and then you kind of get this setup where they go back to Corey's house, they make a bunch of photocopies, and then they go out and for Halloween they're all in costumes and they're trashing shit. They trash Jonah's house, and they also put up copies of this picture of him with the bloody nose everywhere. I mean, it's just bullying to
Cool.
like the 100th degree. Yeah, it's just super cruel. Um, and then eventually Corey splits off from the others and ends up seeing Jonah, and he kind of goes up to him, and at first there's a little bit of it's like he kind of wants to apologize, but there's some antagonism, and then they end up begrudgingly on Corey's part, like, basically Jonah says like, I might have a concussion, can you walk me home? And so he does, and then that's when Jonah brings up this cocytus game. And so once they start that, you start to wonder, because now that through the journey their friendship reconnects. And I wondered initially if what we're seeing is just that now we're seeing their joint imagination again, the same as when they were kids, because they're kind of friends again, and this is the way, as a viewer, the filmmaker is showing us this. But it's still open interpretation, but there is ultimately an argument that they are in between, because what you find out at the end of the movie is that Jonah died before that night. So when Corey comes back upon him, he's actually talking to his ghost for the rest of the movie, and that's who he's walking home. And it just really makes for like some amazing, like, when I told John I was going to rewatch this, he's like, be sure to have a box of tissue because it gets me every time. And it's very heartfelt and emotional.
He says that every time. Like quite a few people always say it. Make sure you're ready. You must be in the mood to cry. That movie doesn't affect me that way. Like
Really?
I don't. It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't hit me as. I mean, it's sad that Jonah dies. Um, but it doesn't hit me that way because the mean in the meantime, it's all about reconnecting with who you are. Um, like Corey finds himself because of
Yes.
that night. He figures out who he wants to be, who his real friends are, what he believes in, and what he wants to fight for. And Jonah was the catalyst for all of that.
Yeah.
And he carries it. He carries it with him always. We see that at the end of the movie,
Yeah.
when he still has Jonah's mask and has kind of an altar set up where he'll remember his friend with this.
Well, and he has that picture of him with the bloody nose
Right,
enlarged on his wall, and
enlarged.
it's so funny because when you see it initially, it's such a pathetic and sad and like contemptuous image, and when you see it at
Right,
the end, it's almost joyous.
exactly. That's why I don't think it's not. It's not a. I mean, there are sad things that happen, but I don't think it's a sad movie. It's an empowering story.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, because not only does Corey find, I mean, he reconnects with himself. He figures out what really matters to him. He reconnects with his friend, even though it was done, you know, in the in between. Um, and he finds like the joy and magic in life again. Like those aren't things to be sad about.
Definitely. I mean, I think the thing that's sad to me is that
He died.
it's not just that he died. I mean, that is definitely sad. But the thing that's sad, the thing that tear jerks me in that movie is not the revelation that he's dead, but the revelation that he's dead at that point where they would have become friends again.
Okay.
Like he had just salvaged the relationship and realized what this person means to him and how
And then he
foolish he
loses
has
them.
been. And then it's like, oh yeah, but you guess what? It's too late. I'm not here anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very well orchestrated, the pacing of the movie and the way that revelation comes out and its emotional impact because of how where it's placed in the story. um it's just very impressive how they did that. I feel like, and that's it is. You're right. It is overall. It is a joy. Like that ending is always uplifting, but it's just that heartbreak moment where it's like, oh my god, if only he'd known. And really, it's just a matter of hours, right? He was just
Mm-hmm.
helping pick on him a few hours before, and just in the
And
time it
he
took
was
them,
alive then.
yeah, in like 3 hours, where it went from them at the skate park beating him up to them,
Mm-hmm.
on Halloween night out uh fucking stuff up in that 3 hours or whatever is when Jonah died. So it's like, oh my
Right.
God, like, ah,
But I mean, that's a way that it mirrors life. Like we never know when everything is going to change. So, I mean, you want to tell people how you feel while they're still here,
yes, definitely.
not wait until it's too late. So, I mean, there are definitely sad things in it, but I still don't think it's a. I think it's a very empowering movie. I might just look at it from a different perspective, which I mean, I tend to see the world from a different perspective, anyways. Um, and it sucks, but it was a catalyst that changed Corey's life
Yes.
because he wasn't happy with who he was. He was just going along with things because he wanted to fit in with his friends and he didn't want to be an outcast. But you see him butt heads with Django, who is the leader of his wolf pack and kind of his best friend now. They butt heads all the time, and then about halfway through the movie, he kind of makes a stand and stands up to him.
Yeah.
And without what happens with Jonah, that he may never have done that, and that's not who he wanted to be.
Not only without Jonah would he possibly have remained in that, you know, just awful existence with that he didn't really, they weren't really his friends anyway. He was just kind of going along because it was popular and, you know, whatever. But also, like, he was not going to follow his dream. His dream, they early on after the skate park where they pick on Jonah the first time, they go to Corey's house, and it's his dad reveals that he got something in the mail from New York because he wanted to go there to study photography, and Django gives him shit about it, and they kind of butt heads about that. I think that's the first time we actually see them butt heads. When Corey backs down, he throws the you know, the application packet or whatever to this school away. And Django's reasoning is like, why would I want to leave? I'm a god here. And I just feel like that's such a great line. And man, there's something about the coming of age, and I definitely feel it's not, you can't make a sweeping generalization about anybody or any group of people or whatever, but there is definitely something where I feel like the most popular or the most elite in high school, I mean, you got blinders on because it's high school. It's going to go away in 4 years. And, you know, unless you're going to swim in the local community college, you know, for the rest of your life, and then stay in the same town, like, it's just so transient. And the idea that he's like, why would I go anywhere? I'm a god here. Like, oh my God. like, it's just such a stupid statement. But you see how it lures people into this life trap where it's like, yeah, and then you graduate and 30 years later, you're like, oh, I wasted my life.
Well, and I mean, you get some interesting conflicts with Django too, because he is that person that he doesn't want to leave. He wants everything to stay the same. He wants him and all his friends to continue to just hang out and get high and do the things they always did. And I mean, he does have, like, you can see he's struggling with, I'm losing my friends, they're all going to leave me.
Yeah.
Um, which is also interesting. And while Corey figures out who his real friends are, he and Django, like, they are friends. They don't agree, but by the end of the movie, when he does find Jonah and he's heartbroken, Django is there, and like they actually really see each other at the end. They're
Yeah.
not wearing masks. Corey is just broken and sobbing, and Django comforts him. And at first, you can tell he's uncomfortable, and then he's there for him. I mean,
That's a good point. Yeah.
they are really friends. They don't have the same perspective. Django wants everything to stay the same, and Corey doesn't. But up until now, he's just been going along with it. He wouldn't speak up for himself. And like the first half of the movie, Corey very much lives. He lives in his head behind his camera lens,
Mm-hmm.
and I love how through the first, particularly in the first half of the movie, we're seeing the world through his camera. So we'll get those snapshots where you're looking at it in color, and then the camera freezes for a minute and goes black and white, and you
Yeah.
see his snapshot, and then life goes on, and it continues. Um, but you get to see the world through his eyes as the story progresses, and he goes into the in between with Jonah. He's not looking at the world through his camera anymore.
And that's interesting because what keeps happening? He keeps leaving the camera behind, and Django picks it up and carries it. It happens twice. He
More than
leaves
once,
it.
twice.
No, if I'm not mistaken, so when they run back into each other in, I think, the convenience store where the girl works, he gives it
Right,
to
because
him,
he left it.
but he leaves it again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like he's almost rejecting like I have been blind. I have been seeing the world as a passenger, and now it's time for me to participate once more and relearn these things. So that's a really interesting point, and it fits with that. Like he's leaving the camera behind because that was his not to say photography, because he does end up being a photographer, right? At the end, they it's he's Skyping with the girl and
Romney.
Romney, and she says something like, "Where's it's not Vice. It's damn it. I can't think of what it is, but it is a known entity in the world. It's like something equivalent to Vice, the journalist.
Oh, okay.
She says, what are they sending you to take pictures of tonight? I can't remember what it was, but it's something like that actually exists. So they posit that he went on and became like a successful photographer for, this whatever this news entity is or journalistic entity. So it's not the photography, but it's just at that moment, that's how he's dealing with everything. Like he's looking at Django punches Jonah, and what's Corey looking at it through? The lens, right?
The
So
camera.
he's removed. It's the way he doesn't have to actually like participate in a way.
Right. And when he leaves the convenience store, not only does he forget the camera, but he throws his mask on the ground.
Yes,
He
his wolf
leaves
mask.
his wolf mask, and throughout the first half of the movie, especially when he's dealing with Django and his friends, most of the time he's either wearing the mask or he's got it kind of perched on the top of his head,
Yeah.
his wolf mask. Um, and then once he stands up to Django at the convenience store, he throws it away, and we don't see him wear a mask anymore until he wears Jonah's mask at the end. And going back to what we were saying about Corey having lots of dreams, there's something that Jonah says to him while they're playing the coquetus game, because Corey complains that we I don't like this. I don't like being scared. And um, Jonah tells him, the Corey I knew loved to be scared. Halloween was his favorite day
Yes.
of the year. His head was full of dreams that he wanted to live. What happened to you? And Corey just tells him it was survival. By the end of the movie, he gets his dreams back. He's living his dream.
So Cocytus is one of the tributary rivers of Hades in Greek mythology. One of the
Oh,
five rivers
really?
of Hades or
Okay.
Hades, however I say Hades, I don't know. Um,
I believe it's Hades, but
and let's see, a river in Hades that was said to be a tributary of Acheron. So it's the netherworld. And so one of the things, in fact, I believe it's Jonah that says, I love this quote, sometimes you have to peel back a piece of reality when it gets in the way.
mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's what they do when they start this game. And then there's also a lot of moments where they juxtapose, you're looking at them and then you're looking at the younger versions of them. They have two younger actors, and so they kind of juxtapose those often and switch back and forth flawlessly. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a really cool and sweet way that they kind of make this correlation between, and just the idea that like you don't have to let this stuff go. Like you can, I mean, we're living examples of that, right? I feel like a lot of this is why it is such a heartfelt movie. Like it just captures so many of these elements of aging out of childhood, and that push pull, the war of being a teenager, where it's like, you know, you're fast, you want to grow up, but well, I mean, some people don't want to ever be a kid again, right? They're immediately like, put the toys away. Now I'm an adult when they're 17. But other people, it's like a push pull. It's like I want to be an adult, but I don't want to lose being a kid. And you don't necessarily have to. Well, what you find out as an adult is you don't really need to you don't have to have such a clear cut line, right? I always say, like, tending bar for 5 years, I learned very quickly there's really no such thing as adults. The thing, in my opinion, that makes somebody an adult is, can you accept responsibility for your own actions? Then you're an adult. If you can't, then you're not. I saw a lot of people who had, adult jobs who acted like fucking children. So but when you're a teenager, you can't see that. You know what I mean? Like anybody, I mean, I was the kind of person that like I didn't want to relinquish. Even when I started like girls, I'm like, but I still like Transformers and GI Joe and comic books, and it's like I'm like, why do they have to be mutually exclusive? Of course, the rub is today they don't have to be, and I'm always just like, man, we would have killed for that. But I don't know, they just do such a good job with capturing that element of childhood's end, and the Cocytus game it was just a nice mechanism by which to have all of this happen. And there's a thing also. So Jonah tells. I thought it was going to be more, but it's two. He tells two stories, and they're important enough where, as he's telling the story, Corey and Jonah go away, and the movie shows you actors and a setting that is the story. So the first one is a girl, Jeannie, who trying to she's playing with her older sister. Two boys come and they lead her off, and then Jeannie tries to follow, falls behind, gets to the storm drain, and then is apparently killed. They don't really say it outright, but it's definitely suggested that something terrible happens. And then the other one is the Edward, the kid that like in that house they're all afraid of. And Corey's like, I'm not afraid of the house anymore. And then Jonah proves him wrong. But he tells a story about how this kid, Edward, swore he'd always keep his dreams to be the most important thing. And then it shows Edward age out of that and how his life becomes miserable because he turns his back on those dreams and they fester and want revenge for being shunned.
Right. Abandon your dreams and they can become resentful.
Yeah. So what did you make of that? Because I thought it's interesting that they actually show you these stories. So I felt like they would, I mean, and they definitely did echo throughout the rest of the movie, but I felt like maybe they would tie in some more, like some bigger or more important way.
Edward and the dreams becoming resentful was a reminder of what was like of the path that Corey was on. Because in the beginning of the movie, um, Corey says a couple times that even when he first meets up with Jonah, well, I had to grow up. Like that's
Yeah.
just how it is. You have to grow up. And Corey was not. He was He was kind of pushing his dreams aside to go with the flow of the crowd until Jonah reminded him that he had all these dreams and that he could still live them. Well, Jonah and Romany, because he makes a pact with her that they're both going to live their dream.
Yeah.
The story with the little girl, I take it that it kind of ties back into when we find out what happened to Jonah in the past.
Yes.
I think that's kind of the point.
So do you think, and I didn't back it up to look, but do you think the two boys that come and take Jeannie's sister away are the two boys that assault? So
I don't know. I didn't notice if they were the same. I never really thought of it that they were the same people. I think it was just more of a reminder that there are monsters in the world and they look like us. Bad
yeah,
things happen to people. Um, you can be a little kid full of magic and dreams, and then something horrible happens that kills that.
right.
So I don't know that they were meant to be the same people. Because I mean, he doesn't even tell you when he tells you the story about Jeannie and her sister. There's no time frame. So I mean, we don't know if it's the same time period or. I think it was more just um, a reminder that bad things can happen to anybody. and then it ties back into what happened to him later.
Yeah, I think you're 100% correct. Also, I don't. I guess in thinking about it, I'm thinking about this now, so I will clarify as it's clarifying in my head. I don't even think that I thought that it was the same two people, but I wondered if it was the same two actors because I'm wondering
Maybe.
if it seems like it would be in this movie's kind of repertoire to cast the same two people, even if it was different times or it wasn't meant to be the same two characters, just to kind of put a blanket like these are monsters. And it almost like in a way these monsters that can do this and can rob you of your childhood or your life or whatever, like you said, bad things happen, a reminder of that monsters look like people. It almost like it's like an external force, not so much as people, but like like an evil presence or something. um and then that makes me wonder if is Genie like is that just Jonah telling what happened to him as a metaphor?
Maybe. Because I think that is like Jonah. I don't think Jonah even knows at first that he's dead yet. We don't know, but I don't think he knows yet either. Because he even tells us that sometimes people don't know that they
Yeah,
don't
it's
know
really
they're dead.
interesting.
He tells us that when he tells us the story about Genie, and I think that is maybe him kind of and easing into and facing what happens to him and kind of putting it back out there because Corey has kind of forgotten.
Right.
But I don't think Jonah knows until a, right around the same time that Corey figures it out. When Jonah doesn't know until he starts seeing death and hearing the music.
So what do you think he means when he
I
says
I
early
think
on, I have something I want to show you?
I think he wants to show him
Cocytus.
Cocytus and remind him who he was.
Okay, but I was going to contest your theory just based on him saying that, and not like I wasn't going to be like you're wrong, but I was just say, okay, wait, let's talk about this. But actually,
Right.
I actually think you're correct, and it explains some of his behavior. And I think when he says, "I want to show you something," and I forget what this is right at the start of the journey before they do the step into Cocytus. He says, I want to show you something. And Corey says something to the effect of like, it better not be lame or something. And then Jonah says something like, oh, trust me, you won't forget it or whatever. And
Right.
so I was going to say, so that clearly indicates to me he's talking about his that he's dead. But no, I think you're actually right. I think he wants to show him what he's like, where he's gone wrong, what he wants to show him who he really is.
Right. And what he lost. Up until when we get to the Day of the Dead altar and the music and all that, up until then, Jonah, he's not wearing his mask, but his face is painted.
Yeah.
With like white makeup and black around the eyes, kind of.
Yeah.
Now, when they find the altar and Corey finds him, listening to um, the singers, the La Llorona type woman in the Sugar Skull makeup singing, Jonah's face is no longer painted. It's him now. So then you see his real face. Because up until then, he was painted. He disappears. Corey goes looking for him. He finds the Dia del Muertos altar. He sees Jonah's picture on it. And then when he sees Jonah in the crowd, his face is not painted. And you see his real face.
Oh, that's brilliant. Wow.
So that's how I always took it. I mean, I I don't know if that's exactly what the director intended, but that's how I took it.
I would suggest I would guess that the director would say whatever you got from it's correct, right? Which
Right.
is I mean that's why you make a movie like this and why you leave it not exactly all the there's an ambiguity to the way that it's made and the points that it makes and I like that you know
Well, and when they enter Cocytus, they say they have that rhyme. Um, we enter the bridge over Cocytus where the veil is thin. Once we cross, we leave the mortal realm and enter the world of enchantment where we see things as they really are. Dreams are true and stories too. So it starts out when we're in the real world, and before they start playing Cocytus, they're wearing masks and makeup, and they don't see things how they really are. As they play the game and kind of come back to who they used to be, they start they really start to see each other and see things how they really are. And I mean, I think that's one of the reasons I don't find it sad. I mean, it has sad things, but it's not sad to know who you are or to be able to see. We lose
yeah
sight of things, and when things, I mean, Corey becomes a better person by the end of the story. He becomes a better person, and not only does he realize who he wants to be, but like what really matters to him. Because in the beginning, his friends are picking on Jonah, and he just kind of ignores it, goes along with it, and is looking at he's just looking at everything through the camera. Um, Toward the end, once Jonah realizes he's dead and the shadows start trying to come for him, Corey protects him.
yeah
Like he's in front of him, like shielding him with his body,
yeah
trying to fight off the shadows with a flash or with a flare.
oh it's a great scene
It really is. Um, but like he's fiercely protecting him when earlier he didn't do anything except take photographs and pretend he wasn't there. And throughout the story, it comes up a couple times because Corey talks to Romany, his kind of girlfriend, about it. Um, the whole idea of, have you ever promised that you'd be there for somebody and then you weren't? Which is one of the major themes of the story, because something bad happened when they were kids, and he ran away, and then he just kind of disappeared. But it sort of haunted Corey. Like, I think it's always haunted him.
that's why he can't be friends with him because he doesn't want to face it right so that's why he turned his back on him because he just can't face it he can't face the fact that he left him there he can't face the fact that whatever happened he totally bailed on him and then also like Jonah's mother died, and there's like all it just
Mm-hmm.
seems like he had a really like bad couple of
Terrible.
years. Yeah.
Right. And then he lost his best friend, who not only ghosted him, but then was kind of bullying him too.
Yeah.
Like, at least guilt by association. He
Yeah.
wasn't trying to stop it. But yeah, it seems like Jonah had a pretty tough life. And Corey just kind of ignored. I'm just going to forget about it. I'm just going to run with the cool kids
Yeah.
and be part of that crowd, and I just don't have to think about it. It doesn't matter. But I mean, I think it's kind of a cool theme, that because I mean, I think we've we've all thought about that. Oh, I used to be I used to be best friends with this person, and now I wonder where, like, I haven't seen them in 30 years.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of part of, like, we have the people that stick around forever, but there's always somebody that maybe you guys drifted apart or whatever. It's not as cut and, I mean, in Corey's case, something bad happened. Sometimes it just kind of fades out, but you still kind of think about that. Well, I, you thought you were going to be with this person forever, whether it was a best friend or, a significant other, whatever, and then they're just not part of your life anymore.
Yeah.
By the end of the movie, even though Jonah is gone, Corey's kind of got a constant reminder he's not going to forget him again. We see that with the mask and the he has enlarged that giant photograph so that he always sees his face. And I think in seeing Jonah's face, he remembers his own face.
Nicholas Verso, the director, but there is something called Crazy Fun Park. It says 2023, and it's apparently a series. Looks like 10 episodes. When his best friend Maplethorpe dies suddenly in an abandoned park, Chester discovers that his friend now lives with other children in the park, leading them to reestablish their friendship as they go through difficult adolescence. So it sounds like a similar kind of wheelhouse. It's got a very striking thumbnail if you look it up. I really want more from this guy. I feel like this movie was such a great first movie.
That was his first movie? I don't think I was aware of that.
Yeah, it was his first feature.
Wow.
He's got a bunch of shorts.
It's a hell of a first picture.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a theme now we have just so many fantastic first pictures in recent memory. I would definitely like more people to see this movie.
Oh, I would too. I mean, it's so rich. I mean, the cinematography, I love all the hidden images that we start seeing as they play the game. The shadow monsters and people with fangs and wolf eyes and all these different things that you could easily miss if you're not paying attention. Um the symbolism, all the different stuff with true faces and masks.
yes.
Um the I mean, it's got some amazing quotes. Um I I love it's said a few times by a couple different, because I think Romney says it to Corey first, but then Corey says it again later. Most people aren't really scared of heights, not of falling. They're scared that they'll jump.
Yeah, that's a
Which
great
I
quote.
I love that one.
Jonah says that to Corey,
Jonah
and
says
then
it to
later
Corey.
Corey
Corey
says it
says it
to
to
Romney.
Romney.
Yeah, as if he passes it off as his own like nugget of wisdom, you know.
Right. But I love that quote because that is like that kind of sums up that whole conflict between childhood and adulthood, growing up and choosing not to lose who you were, um because not everybody is like, obviously we're not afraid, like we didn't lose who we are. The hardest part for us is sticking in the
Yeah.
sticking the 9 to 5, you know daily droll bullshit. And like, I just, that quote resonates with me really, really hard because it's not the unknown or the adventure or any of that that's scary. It's the being stuck in the same place and not jumping.
Yeah. Yep.
But I mean, the quote you brought up is also a very good one. I mean, there's so many that.
Yeah, there are.
Like there are so many, but
That that
that's
one,
one that stands out.
that one, the "'Tis the Night" is credited to Cleveland Cox, who I don't even know who that is. I'm assuming it's a poet or something. Um,
Probably.
and it's interesting. The jump quote is interesting because then it fits in with the whole motif of the movie, the title "Boys and Trees," and there's that moment where um Corey, in kind of the height of his like self-examination and epiphany, tells Romany, because she says, girls basically grow up faster because they have to, because boys are too busy, I forget if she actually says climbing trees or whatever, but it's this thing that he says, the boys just don't want to stop climbing the trees. And it's so funny he says that because he was in such a hurry to stop being a child, right? So that's where you start to see like, oh, he's starting to learn something, right?
Right. Yeah. She's the one who says it. Something to the effect of why can't you grow up? Why are the boys just standing around with their heads in the trees? Um, and he tells her later that sometimes the boys climb the trees so that they can, get a better view. That he did not notice her. He just didn't,
Yes, that's that's how he said it.
because she's asking why don't you see what's right in front of you? Why do you always have your head in the trees? And he kind of points out that he always saw her. He just didn't really know what to do, I guess.
Yeah,
Sometimes you don't realize what's right in front of you, or
yeah. Another
even if
theme in
you
the movie.
do, you don't know what to do with it.
Yeah. Uh, man, I don't know. I would definitely implore people to seek this out on YouTube and to watch it. And I would love it if at some point in the near future we could get a physical copy of this movie.
Oh yeah, me too. I mean, I look every so often. I have no like. Usually, there's always at least some kind of it. Like, I have no issues with anything in this movie, and I could watch it multiple times and never get tired of it. I always
Yeah,
notice new things each time I watch it. And it's visually stunning. It's a very pretty film. Um, the the way it entwines the real world and the in between is great. I love when we do get the story at the end about their past, how it starts out with the voices of Jonah and Corey telling the story as
hmm,
children, and then it becomes their adult voices, and then it becomes just Corey talking
yeah,
as he faces things on his own. So I mean, it's very deep. Every time you watch it, you're going to notice new things, and if you in a world where we've seen 900 zillion remakes and reboots and you know very few original stories, this is a very original story that'll stick with you. So it's absolutely worth your time. And what, the $5 to rent it, I think.
yeah, 100%. I'm gonna try. I was looking earlier while we were talking. I thought for sure somebody would have curated a Spotify playlist for every song in this, and I don't find one. So I'm gonna try to go through and do that by the time we post this. So hopefully, if you're
Oh, that
listening
would
to
be
this and
awesome.
if you click on the show notes, hopefully I'll have a link to a Spotify playlist because I would really like to do that.
Okay.
And I will, for the first time and probably only time in my life, put a Bush song on on a playlist.
I
Um,
I love that song. I mean, I was never into Bush, but that, like, I don't know, it just puts me right there, and I remember the 16-year-old kid I used to be.
well, yeah, I would just implore people to, support this flick, and I hope Nicholas Verso gets a deal to have this distributed. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of what he does, knowing that he's got something coming out. This has been Boys and Trees. I'm Sean,
I'm Missy.
and the Horror Vision presents Elements of Horror will return.